Cathodic Protection Network, Living Specification and Constitutional Framework. Scientists talk about a theory of everything in physics, but most scientists only mean particles, forces and equations. They don't include banks, they don't include war, they don't include corruption, they don't include pipelines exploding in cities, but they should. Because corrosion science doesn't exist in a vacuum. It sits inside money systems, insurance systems, legal systems and geopolitical systems that decide whose lives are protected and whose lives are expendable. Everything is connected, from the Big Bang to a rusted pipe under your feet. Corrosion is not just a technical problem, it is a political problem. When standards are written by committees funded by, say, the same companies that profit from failure, when national laboratories refuse to test inconvenient results, when compliance becomes a business model instead of a safety system, science becomes theatre. I didn't fight institutions because I wanted to be rebellious. I fought them because the measurements were wrong and people were put in danger because of it. Perfect pipe-to-soil readings can hide catastrophic failure. Clean numbers mask decaying steel. The industry knows this. But perfect looking numbers are easier to sell than the uncomfortable truth. Banks don't finance safety, they finance risk that can be insured. Insurance companies don't exist to protect people, they exist to bet that people will fail and profit when they do. Funding rounds are polite gambling sessions where rich people bet on poor people's ideas. Patents are supposed to protect inventors, but more often they protect those who can afford lawyers. Compliance frameworks have become commercial weapons. If you can own standards, you can own the market. If you can own the market, you can own the narrative of what safe means, even when it isn't safe at all. Energy doesn't move by magic. It moves through steel. Drill pipes, pipelines, tank farms, ships, refineries, distribution networks. Every one of these systems corrodes, and when they fail, nations panic, markets shake, and wars begin. Pipelines don't just carry fuel, they carry political power, and when corruption rots inside infrastructure, violence follows. Corrosion science is not neutral. It is part of the machinery of geopolitics. I've been homeless. I've lived in council houses. I've fought in wars I later understood were built on lies. I've watched whistleblowers crushed, scientific truth buried by committees, and engineers silenced by funding threats. I've also seen social media start to crack that control. People now film, record and share. The system is losing its ability to hide, and that's why censorship is increasing. That's why scientists who speak out get attacked. That's why activists get arrested. That's why truth is labelled dangerous. This is why Cathodic Protection Network exists, not as a company or a brand, but as a living scientific constitution where truth outranks compliance. Field data outranks committee opinion. Human safety outranks profit, and no institution is above challenge. Every coordinator must study science, geopolitics, finance, and record suppression, preserve raw data, defend whistleblowers, reject corrupt funding, and update the framework as the world changes, because science that cannot update becomes dogma, and dogma kills people. Corrosion and corruption behave the same way. They start small, they are ignored, they are hidden, they are normalised, and then one day something explodes. Pipes, cities, systems, nations. This isn't about steel, it's about truth. And truth, like corrosion, never stops working when people pretend it isn't there. In order to structure Cathodic Protection Network blockchain, the following is a guide. It contains a guide to science, ethics, geopolitics, and the human impact. The purpose, why this exists. Cathodic Protection Network, CPN, exists to protect life, infrastructure, and communities through honest corrosion science. Expose false standards, corrupt compliance systems, and captured institutions. To defend scientific integrity from political, financial, and institutional interference. To preserve knowledge independent from corporate capture. Record field truth that cannot be buried by committees, banks, insurers, or lobbyists. To treat infrastructure failure as a geopolitical risk, not just an engineering fault. This network recognises that corrosion failure is not just technical. It is financial, political, ethical, and human. Pipelines connect energy to geopolitics, and geopolitics decides who lives safely. 2. Foundational principles, what we believe. Science comes first. All claims must be observable, measurable, reproducible, and open to challenge. Mythology, ideology, politics, religion, and finances are acknowledged as forces that shape behaviour, but they are not substitutes for the scientific method. Next, paragraph 2. No institutional authority is absolute. No single body, standards committees, national labs, regulators, banks, insurers or governments is allowed to define the truth unchallenged. Einstein said the reason why he was considered a genius was because he challenged all axioms. That is exactly what we are doing. Corrosion is a social risk. Failures lead to death, displacement, environmental damage, political instability, financial exploitation, and therefore corrosion science is a public safety discipline, not a private commercial tool. Two, 4. We are money. The system only functions because workers, engineers, technicians, inspectors, drivers and operators physically sustain it. Currency has no value without human labour and consent. We in Cathodic Protection Network have value and some currencies do not. Paragraph 2.5. Knowledge must not be owned by power, patents, standards, copyrights, trademarks, compliance frameworks. These are all documented, time-stamped, and they must be transparent, but must never be allowed to silence truth or bury inconvenient data. Chapter 3. Governance model. How the network operates. This document is a living constitution. This specification is versioned, time-stamped, public, editable by evidence, updated as science evolves, updated as geopolitics changes, similar to Constitution amendments, the US governance model, case law evolution, the United Kingdom constitutional model. Chapter 3.2. Evidence-based amendments. Changes to this specification, this document, require field data, independent replication, open peer challenge, recorded dissent, transparent justification. This applies to the whole of CPN blockchain. Chapter 3. Coordinator duties. This is mandatory to occupy the position of a Cathodic Protection Coordinator. Every coordinator must watch all provided geopolitical, scientific and financial material, must log conflicts between standards and field reality, record institutional pressure or suppression, protect whistleblowers, preserve raw data, escalate contradictions, reject funding that demands silence, treat safety as non-negotiable. Failure to do so disqualifies the coordinator status. Chapter 4. System Scope. What must be monitored? 4.1. Technical Domain. Cathodic Protection Field Data. Pipe to soil readings. Benchmark corruption. Instrument error. Compliance misuse, pipeline integrity, leakage prediction, false positives and false negatives, rare earth recovery from scrap, recycling and carbon capture systems. Chapter 4.2. Institutional Domain. Banks, insurers, standards bodies, national laboratories, regulatory agencies, government departments, contractors, investors and compliance consultancies. Geopolitical Domain, Chapter 4.3. Energy transit routes. Hormuz, Bab el-Mandeb, channels which control all the world's energy movement. Petrodollar systems. Banking instability. Commercial real estate collapse. Supply chain fragility. War-driven resource manipulation. Sanctions. Infrastructure weaponization. Chapter 4.4. Human Domain. Housing, homelessness, labour exploitation, suppression of dissent, police enforcement priorities, treatment of whistleblowers, attacks on activists, social media censorship, public propaganda. All of these are of concern to coordinators in Cathodic Protection Network blockchain. Chapter 5. Data ethics and blockchain role. The blockchain exists to preserve tamper-proof records, timestamp discoveries, protect inventors, prevent institutional erasure, track suppression events, record regulatory interference, preserve raw field evidence, prevent retroactive rewriting of history. No record may be deleted. Corrections must be appended, not erased. Chapter 6, Funding and Independence Rules. 6.1. Funding is conditional. Funding is only accepted if no editorial control is demanded, no suppression clauses exist, no compliance manipulation is required, no political loyalty is demanded. In other words, we will not be subject to the will or wishes of financiers and the currency situation. Chapter 6.2. Financial conflicts must be declared. Banks, insurers, contractors and standards bodies must declare conflicts of interest before participating. 7. Public duty and moral position. The network recognizes genocide is legal under international law. Infrastructure supports geopolitics. Silence enables violence. Technology is political, whether we like it or not. Suppression of science causes deaths. Engineers are morally responsible for how systems are used. 8. Coordinator instruction summary. Every coordinator must study science, study geopolitics, study finance, study institutional capture, protect truth over comfort, challenge false benchmarks, log suppression, preserve evidence, update this specification, defend whistleblowers, reject corrupted compliance, act in the public interest, treat science as life critical. Placement recommendations. Your questions answered. I was asking, should I put this in front at the beginning or the end of this document? The answer is both. At the front as the moral and scientific foundation, at the end as the enforcement framework and call to action. Why? Front, evidence, end, responsibility. This network exists because corrosion is not a technical failure. It is a moral failure disguised as compliance.